Yeah, welcome back. Well, a credit report is a statement that has information about your credit activity and current credit situation, such as loan paying history and the status of your credit account. Lenders use this report to help them decide if they will allow people take money, what interest rate they could offer. And the association leading this is the Credit Bureau Association of Nigeria. Well, we have the chairman, Dr. Tunde Popola, joining us now to tell us more about credit reporting. Good morning, Mr. Popola. Good to have you.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Nice to be here.
Great. So first of all, let's assess the credit reporting culture of Nigeria or Nigerians from your activities, from your eyes. How popular or unpopular is credit reporting?
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's good to start by saying that credit reporting is all about making credible information available to lenders in Nigeria so that they can have the opportunity to lend with very good information without lending in the dark. Part of the challenges we have had in the past as a nation, and this is the reason why credit penetration had been low in Nigeria, had been that there were no credit bureaus in Nigeria. There was no credit reporting system. So with the advent of credit bureaus licensed by the Central Bank in Nigeria in 2009, 3 licensed credit bureaus evolved: CLC Credit Bureau, First Central Credit Bureau, and Credit Registry Credit Bureau's services. So those have changed the landscape of availability of information to lenders in Nigeria. And I'm happy to report that since 2009, the Nigeria financial system has been benefiting significantly from the activities of the 3 licensed credit bureaus in Nigeria. So the era of lending in the dark has gone. There is no financial institution in Nigeria today that do not use the services of credit bureau through either for credit report or for credit scores or for portfolio monitoring and so many other products and services that are there. So I want to say that the culture has been embedded in the financial system and is enriching the availability of credit to Nigerians, especially to consumers and the micro, small, and medium enterprises in Nigeria.
But you know, the issue of data availability is like a common challenge in Nigeria, and even when the government tries to break into that or break that problem, we have different parts of the government taking data. So how do you now, as an association, in providing information for lenders, how do you get your data to ensure that, yes, the data that you're actually giving to these people, they are something that the banks or any of the financial organizations can work with and eventually be able to get back their money?
So the industry is a regulated industry. The bureaus are licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria. There is a CBN regulations that govern the operations of credit bureaus relating to how data will be sourced and how data will be made available to financial institutions. And of course, in 2017, the federal government of Nigeria, incredibly, very, very proactively passed the Credit Reporting Act of 2017. And that also has made it mandatory for financial institutions to furnish data to the credit bureaus, to the licensed credit bureaus. So it's by law that financial institutions will have to furnish data about, borrowers to the 3 licensed credit bureaus in Nigeria. And there's a format for presenting this information from time to time. There's a data template, which, gives information around 3 categories. First is about the demography of the subject matter or the firmography. If it's a company, talks about your name, your date of birth, your address, and all of that are there. And then, of course, there will then be credit information, which talks about the kind of loans you have taken, what are the terms and the conditions, what has been the payment behavior, and all of that. And then there are other issues, other information that are contained in that are furnished to the credit bureaus by law, including address information, return check information, mitigations, guarantors information, and all of those information are, reviewed and they are validated from time to time. And so it's important that financial institutions submit reliable credible, accurate information. Because if you don't do that, the data subject whose information you are submitting may take you to court, may take you on, and it also may lead to wrong, assessment of a borrower if the wrong information is passed on to the credit bureau. And that's why it's very important that what comes to the bureau are credible information. And this has been supported by the advent of national identity card, BVN. All of that have assisted. So the issue of identification have assisted the bureaus in being able to bring together what we can call credible information that you can learn with trust, with confidence, based on this information.
All right, but what about data protection for individuals? Is our data safe?
Yeah, so I can confirm to you that the data is safe. Bureaus operate in line with global practices. Nigeria has adopted the global practices on data security and data furnishing. So we follow this seriously because Nigeria has domesticated that global practice in Nigeria. And so you cannot give, for instance, while banks and other financial institutions or creditors generally can really bring and furnish the information about borrowers to the credit bureau, they cannot access those information without the consent of the borrowers or whoever they want to access. So there's always that consent which has to be given either by the individuals or by the companies before the furnishers of information can really access those information and use them. And that's the best practice. That's the global practice that we are following in Nigeria. So we're not doing anything that's different from what you see in other parts of the world.
Okay, so we don't just get a strange call or get some messages that we cannot trace. But anyway, for this year, your association said that it will focus on MSME, and you noted that 4% of MSMEs have access to credit. What are the major findings from your assessment of the MSMEs when it comes to credit reporting, and what are the major hurdles to their access to credit?
Okay, so before now, our association has focused on empowering the financial institutions and suppliers of data to get them aware of the importance of credit reporting. We've helped to develop capacities together with the Central Bank of Nigeria and the IFC, a member of the World Bank Group. And so everybody in that space has embraced credit reporting, and they're using it. Now, the major beneficiaries of credit bureau infrastructure in any economy are the consumers and the small businesses. And that's why now we have to focus on MSMEs. As you have rightly pointed out, accessing credit by MSMEs has always been a challenge among all other challenges that they face in Nigeria. And the reason is very simple. Banks want to know more about them. And so they didn't have the kind of information that will enable them to lend to them with confidence. And this is what the bureaus are bringing to the table. With the availability of credit bureaus, a bank can easily know whether an SME is enjoying a credit somewhere else and what has been the performance of that, of those, credits that such MSMEs have been enjoying. And if they have not been enjoying, they will know that they have not been enjoying any form of credit. So what we are focusing on now is how to, stimulate MSMEs to be able to see what they can do to improve their own governance, improve their own ways of keeping records, financial records, have structured around their transactions, and make sure that all transactions pass through the banking system, have financial records, have people who help them keep those records, and make sure that even those that are enjoying credit are paying back in line with the terms and conditions of such credit. So this is what the association is focusing on now, to engage the MSMEs through the BMOs. Most of them belong to various associations. And so we started, holding some level of webinars, and awareness creation platforms have been created by the Credit Bureau Association of Nigeria to help them to really be able to, focus on how they can have access to credit, to also help them to see where are the credits, where can they get what. And so these are just part of the challenge, part of the activities that CBAN is focusing on for the rest of this year.
Okay, but how do you get the MSMEs, before, getting the info and, accessing rural areas? How do you, go about this?
Okay, so because we have most MSMEs belong to associations, like I said, so we go through the business management organizations called the associations and group of they are always operating groups and associations, and so we hold sessions with this and do try to develop their capacity on the best way they can present themselves to banks and to other financial institutions. Secondly, is that because we work with all financial institutions in Nigeria, including all the microfinance banks, all the commercial banks, investment banks, mortgage banks, all institutions, we work with them. We even work with telcos, discos, and all other organizations that have anything to do with providing services on credit. And so we use these other organizations to reach to their customers and help to really propagate the culture of responsible borrowing.
All right, and so the pandemic actually changed a whole lot of things, not just in Nigeria, globally. How did that affect how you get your information and both the debtors and lenders handling of your information and accessing credit?
Okay, so luckily, the credit reporting is, powered by technology. So data is submitted to the bureaus through, web-enabled devices or through APIs and so on and so forth. So what we did is that initially when the pandemic started, a lot of financial institutions, closed because we were asked to close and people were working from home. But I think within 1 or 2 months, we developed some level of, tools through what we call application, program interfaces called APIs. So through APIs, then financial institutions can submit their data to us, seamlessly without any form of challenges. And so it enables us to have a link with all the financial institutions so they can submit data to us. They can also be able to access the data from our platform through that. So there's no physical involvement of anyone, and there's no manual intervention at this stage for you to get the data or for you to submit data to the credit bureaus. That's what we adopted. And we also encourage the lenders to make sure that they do engage their customers, because a lot of them has challenges during this pandemic. Some of them had their businesses because there was some level of lockdown. They were not unable to repay as agreed. So, and central bank also did a lot in engaging financial institutions to have some level of forbearance for institutions or customers or commercial entities that have problems during this time. So what we did is to encourage the financial institutions to make sure that they do engage their customers, and so they can restructure some of these loans, they can reduce interest rate on some of these loans, and they can repackage some of these loans so that it will not affect the ability of borrowers to be able to get credit in the future. If they do not do that, the challenge is that if those loans were not paid as at when due, it will affect their credit, the credit reports that will be pulled on them, and also it will then affect their credit scores, because the credit score will come down, and that will affect their ability to really get loans or credit in the future. But if they do repackage those facilities based on circumstances that we find ourselves, and not that someone was deliberately not trying to prepay loans, then it will help. And then such data is resubmitted to the bureaus, and then that then will not adversely affect the ability of especially MSMEs and consumers to have access to credit and now and in the future.
All right, Mr. Kukuola, thank you so much for your time on Business Morning. Mr. Tunde Kukuola is the chairman, Credit Bureau Association of Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's see what happened in market last week. Now, Anyete, how's it going?